Warahmatullah.
Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Thank you so much for everyone here. But first of all, I would like to say thank you to our guest today, Mr. or Brother Wan Omar. Thank you so much for coming in the international program for Islamic Economics and Finance class. I would like to explain first about the guest lecture today because the topic itself comes from the course title in this class called Talk and Economic System, which is including the history of Islamic economics. And the participants here also comes from the students in the class. And it's not only from one semester, or I mean not only from the student from the year 1 or year 2, 2020, but also from the student in the 2 semester and 4 semester. I mean. So the students, are you ready to listen to our presenters today? So please prepare your note and also listen it carefully. And if you have any questions or something, suggestions or objections, maybe you might ask it in the end of the presentation because I will open the Q&A sessions in the end. Okay, now we'll start the presentations to Brother Omar. How are you, Brother Omar? Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Can you hear my voice clearly?
Yes, we can hear it clearly.
Okay, thank you. You, Sister Alfina, you are the lecturer here already.
Yes, I'm the lecturer already.
Okay. So you are the one in the group IETC, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Hopefully, I'm not mistaken with somebody else. So that's why I try to clarify here.
Yes, it's okay. Okay. How are you, Brother Omar?
Yeah, alhamdulillah, I'm quite good. And how about you guys?
Alhamdulillah.
Okay.
Alhamdulillah, we are here.
Okay, first of all, thank you to the host, Sister Alfina, for inviting me to this program. And also, thank you to IPIEF. If I'm not mistaken, IPIEF is International Program for Islamic Economics and Finance, yeah?
Yes,
And
you're right.
FEB stands for Faculty of Economy and Business. And UMY stands for University of Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta, right?
100% right.
Okay. The UMY, do you have acronym for UMY? Do I call it UMY or UMI, or do you have any different name? So I'm not mistaken with the different name.
Okay, you may call it UMY.
Okay, UMY. Okay. So I'm really glad to be invited here as one of the speaker. This is my first time experience giving lecture to other countries. So thank you for the invitation. UMY is really famous with my faculty in College of Economics and Management Sciences because there are so many programs that already been done all together with my lecturers. And lots of you guys lecturers are also friends with my lecturers. So we are basically in the same relative of disciples. So yeah, we are in the same group. And my presentation, if I'm not mistaken, but the topic given to me is history of Islamic economics. I will share my screen. Could the host please allow me to share the screen?
Yes, sister. Wait. Okay, now you can share your.
Okay. You guys can see the slide clearly, right?
Yes, you can see it.
Okay. So the topic given to me is about history of Islamic economics. And okay, before that, I will introduce myself. My name is Wan Omar Fadhili, Dewan Mamu Khairi. You can call me Mr. or Brother Omar. And I'm currently a PhD candidate in economics, College of Economics and Management Sciences in IIUM. Previously, I worked as a banker in a public bank in my country, in Malaysia. And then I decided to pursue my master and PhD due to, because banks not really interested in developing more of Islamic economies. They may interested to develop Islamic finance products, though not many of them will be interested, because half of them will interest the portion of half of them will go to conventional Islamic finance, conventional finance. The half of the resources go to Islamic finance. So I don't think they are interested to develop Islamic economy. So that's why I pursue my master and PhD in economics, Islamic economics later. So the topic given is the history of Islamic economics. And actually, this topic is a very wide topic. I try to cover all of the information here, 24 slides, including references, because there are important lessons in the end that I think we need to learn. So please give me a reminder if I'm already almost reached my time limit. Okay, so we'll start at 2:48, 2:45, yeah? So we will end around what time, yeah?
Around 30 to 40 minutes.
So it will be around 4?
30 to 40 minutes.
Okay, so it will be around 3:45.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is my content. First, we will start with the introduction, and then later we will go to about the methodologies, because any of the research, it needs to have to explain to you about the methodologies, how they get the findings and everything. And later we will go to the history of the old and modern Islamic economics. And I will specialize on scholars and thoughts in this content due to that's the available research that we currently have. If I would like to focus on the structure of Islamic economies in different civilization during Abbasid and also Umayyad, I don't think we have many resources to that. So the content is more about scholars and thoughts. And why the name is History of the Old and Modern Islamic Economics? Because like I just mentioned to you just now, the topic of history of Islamic economy is actually very wide. So that's why I eventually define it after we go through the introduction and methodologies later. I specify it into history of the old and modern Islamic economics. And why, I will explain to you later. And lastly is the conclusion. Okay, so before we start our discussion today, the history of Islamic economics is very wide. And why I mention about that, because you can include a lot of things in the history of Islamic economics. Some of the topic they already specify in the history of Islamic economic thoughts, so that they will only focus on the thoughts through the timeline of the past until today. They will only go through the thoughts. Some perhaps go through about the structure of or ideologies. So we need to define it more clearer what it means by history of Islamic economics. That's why having a good definition of it, it is a good introduction for any studies. So if you look at the Oxford language, the definition of history is mean the study of past events, particularly in human affairs. So history can mean in anything. History can also mean about the land, about a continent, or history can also be about the ideologies or about or a plan or any other thing. But usually when we mention about history, it's related to humans. We are not interested to study the history of the rocks. I mean, there are some studies who study about that, but we are not interested. The majority of the study, when we mention about history, it is regard to human affairs. And according to Cambridge Dictionary, it is the study of a record of past events considered together, especially events of a particular period, country, or subject. So more or less, it has the same definition. It's like the Oxford one, just more particular. And and the word history actually originated from Greek word, mean historia, that means finding out, narrative history, and from the word histor means learned or wise man. And so all of the definition allow us and facilitate us to understand what we would like to find when we discuss about history of Islamic economics. So generally we can say history of Islamic economics refer to the study of the past events and affairs that actually related to human affairs and related to Islamic economics. And I put the word Islamic economics in red because Islamic economic term is also a wide thing. It's a wide term. So later we will explain to you, we will explain altogether, I will explain to you what I meant by Islamic economics in this study. So since the history of Islamic economy is broad in meaning, the subject matter can be in terms of scholars, thoughts, schools, study, and etc. So I just mentioned to you just now, when one mentioned about Islamic economics, it can refer to a lot of things. It can refer to the scholars involved, or maybe the thoughts, or the school of ideologies, and also it can refer to the study itself, I mean the structure of the study itself. So what I'm presenting today is the focus is more on the history of Islamic economics as a study of itself. So I'm not interested to explain to you the scholars involved in this. I will mention the name of the scholars, but not in detail who are involved, like what Imam Abu Hanifah said, why he said like this, and then why it changes to Imam Malik. No, I'm not interested in this study. You can do the study of that, but in order for us to make it more clearer and more specific in our discussion today, so this is what I mean. So you'll not get confused. Why? Because if otherwise we will get confused. Why at the beginning of the part we explain about the people, and then the latter part we explain about the ideologies, and then in the end of the part we explain about the curriculum. So it's not consistent. So having good definition at the beginning is very important. I mean, I believe it is because it will give you more systematic in doing any research. So there are two schools that explain about history of Islamic economics as a study. The first schools, those who say that it starts from Prophet Muhammad SAW in the 570 CE until today. And the other schools state it starts from the first conference in Islamic economics at Mecca in 1976 and until today. So the question is, which schools are you from? So it seems simpler actually when we look at these two statements. At first we won't find that why these two statements need to contradict to each other. But actually it will when you go deeper, when you define deeper about what you mean, what is economics. Let's say you are the proponent of those who say the first school. You say that no, actually history of Islamic economics start from the Prophet Muhammad. And the reason is you say that at that time people already discussed about economics and the stuff like the activities of trade, money, and everything. So are you saying that trade and money only exist during Prophet Muhammad, or the previous prophet doesn't face money, the issues of money, doing trade, and also resources and everything? So this is very important for you to decide and for us to decide what you mean by the subject matter, or what you mean when you mention this a study in Islamic economics. And the other school who said that it starts from first conference in Islamic economics at Mecca in 1976 until today, those in this school argue otherwise. So they argue that economics as a study only comes after Adam Smith, right? I mean, even the conventional or those in secular school of economics, they can argue too. They say that in economics, it starts Adam Smith because there are reason, sort reason, right? They have this reason and that reason, and they say it starts with Adam Smith. Well, why they say it start from Adam Smith? Is it the past before Adam Smith they don't deal with economic matters? Do they only do barter system since the beginning of Adam and Eve until Adam Smith and suddenly realize that, oh, now I'm dealing with economics? No, it is impossible. So it is very important for us to decide what you mean by a study of Islamic economics, so that you can define later which period that's suitable when you mean some certain definition of what you mean by a study. So actually, I summarize it for you. My argument is both are correct, but depending on how you see and define the study. But we will go in detail later. So now we go through the definition of study. And study here we refer to the noun, not verb, yeah, because Islamic economic study is not a verb. So the noun study comes from the Latin word studium, which means zeal or painstaking application. This is referring to Oxford language. In Cambridge, it means the activity of examining a subject in detail in order to discover new information. So if you refer to this definition, it is very important. It says that in order for you to say that you are studying a study, it must be a subject in detail, and it must have to discover new information. I mean, through time, you're able to discover new information of it. So when you say that, oh, during Adam and Eve, they already deal with economics, but are they examining that subject or related to economics in detail? And do they discover new information? I mean, when they call it as a study that time. So that's why the conventional or the secular or the modern economists, they argue that it starts with Adam Smith. They are using the same arguments and the same definition and methodologies. But for Islamic economics, are we going to use the same, or are we going to adjust a little bit, or are we totally will reject it? So let's go through. So in Arabic, the term study refers to ilm or dirasa, and based on this meaning, it should be a well-established study. When we would like to refer economics as a study, it should be a well-established study that examines the subject or subject matter study in economics with new discovery of it. So you see the meaning of Cambridge here. It must have a discovered new information. So when you say it already started during the Prophet, so during the Prophet economics as a study able to discover new information? There are systematic study of it, systematic method of it, in order for you to argue that it is a study of economics during that time. Because in the past, for conventional or secular economics, even though they already have mercantilists before Adam Smith, they don't really say it is economic study. It is a political economic study. So it's different. So you can see the different arguments are given and different methodologies are given. So if we follow the method of Professor Dr. Osman Bakar, currently well-known Islamic philosopher in Malaysia currently. Previously, he worked in University of Unity Islam of Brunei, Darussalam, if I'm not mistaken. He was a former IIUM lecturer, then he moved to Brunei, and now he's here in ISTEC. He said that in order for a study to be called as a study, they should have first a clear subject matter, what is being discussed. Second, premises or the arguments. Third, which is the methodology, the methods, how we study about it. And for the objective. Why four of these criteria are important? Okay, let me explain to you. The clear subject matter. Clear subject matter is an argument that always been given or being discussed in philosophy. And I really encourage you to learn about this because philosophy is a specialized study in dealing with the theory of knowledge. Means that when you want to develop to construct a knowledge or deconstruct a knowledge, especially when you face the secular base of studies, you need the capabilities and knowledge to reconstruct and deconstruct and reconstruct the knowledge. So philosophy is one of the study that specialize in it. But don't get confused with some of the confusion and controversy that say that there is controversies in regard to Aqidah and everything. No, don't touch about that. Philosophy is not all about touch in regard to Aqidah and everything. No, it's only part of it, discover it, then you don't have to deal with it. You don't have to touch about it. What you need to learn is some of the methods and arguments and the way they discuss about theory of knowledge. So when they mention it needs to have a clear subject matter refers to the main point of our discussion. let's say we discuss about economics, and let's say we have an occasion with our friends, and we are discussing about we are saying that we are discussing about behavior of human behavior. So is it clear subject matter already to define it as economics? Because human behavior is not only studied in economics. Human behavior also studied in psychology, and human behavior also studied in sociology. So when you define, when you want to study, I want to study human behavior, and you say it is a study of economics, this is wrong, because it's not specific enough. So when you need to understand what you study. So a clear subject matter should be you study about human behavior related to people making decisions out of limited or unlimited resources. But if unlimited resources, then you don't have to make decision, of course. But if you are limited resources, then you need to make decision. So I believe resources are limited, not because God is poor, no, because He wants us to use our mind. That's my argument. Because there are some argument or confusion that say that Allah is most benevolent and is the rizki, the given of the risk. But that does not mean God doesn't give us brain to use it properly, because otherwise all the resources will be limited. And then it must have good premises, methodology, and also clear objective. So since we are studying economics as a study, which periods that have clear all of these four elements? So now we need to identify which period that you think is clear to have these elements. That means it is a proper study of economics, that we can say it is a period where economic study starts for Islamic economics. So we go to first school of opinion that who say that it starts before the first Mecca conference in Islamic economics in 1976, starting from Prophet Muhammad SAW. And those who say that it starts since Prophet Muhammad is because first, it is a well-known reason that Quran and Prophet Muhammad SAW to his Sunnah, they already discussed many important injunctions or issues in regard to subjects related to economic study. So even though they don't call it as economics, or even the term iktisad does not exist back then, but those who argue this way is those because they say that some of the discussion and issues are already discussed during that time. So it's a good argument to say that history of Islamic economics start here. And the other reason is more specific by some of the Islamic philosophers. They say that the term oikonomia that originally comes from Greek word oikos, which means household, and nemein, which means management and dispensation. So for those who don't know or who don't know yet, our term that we always use in Islamic economics, the term economics itself originally comes from oikonomia. It comes from the Greek word oikos, and it means household, and nemein, which means management and dispensation. And so the household refers to estate management too, referring towards the whole manufacturing unit that supply the needs of the people below, including the slave. So it's not only mean the household, the management of the household that consists of a father or parents or the kid or relative, but it also means estate management, means there is kind of estate and there is a manufacturing unit, and they will serve the needs of the people below, including the slave. So this is what it means by oikonomia that come from the Greek word. But in direct translation to Arabic, oikonomia is translated to takbir al-manzil, and that first to be found by the work of Abu Yusuf Yaqub al-Kindi, or well known as al-Kindi only, in his book Fi Aqsam al-Ulum, which means on the divisions of the science or classification of sciences. And it starts, al-Kindi lived around 801 to 873 CE. So the latter term of economics, or directly translated to Takbir al-Manzil, also found in the books of Al-Farabi and Ibn Sina. So we all know Al-Kindi, Al-Farabi, and Ibn Sina, they lived before the first Mecca conference in Islamic economics in 1976, of course. So hence, they say that this is the start period of Islam, the history of Islamic economics, because there is obvious term directly translated from economia, from economics, which is Tanzir al-Manzil in their books. And other scholars who, when I surveyed their works, other scholars who also believe the same, who belong in the first school, other than Osman Bakar, is Ahmad Al-Ashkar and Rodney Wilson. And the arguments are the same, and the reference by from their books is about Islamic economics, a short history. And Muhammad Najatullah Siddiqui also said that the history of Islamic economics starts in the early of during the prophets. But he also said that modern discussion of economics only exists in early of 20th century. And the reference that I refer to, you can see here. And other scholars like Abdul Azim Islahi, he also believed that history of Islamic economics starts during the Prophet already. But he also stated that modern discussion of economic study only exists after the first Mecca conference in 1976. And this is the reference of the book that I refer to. And now we move to the second school of opinion. Those who belong to the second school or opinion says that the history of Islamic economics starts during the first Mecca conference in Islamic economics, 1976. And among the scholars in this category is my own lecturer, my own teacher, Professor Dr. Muhammad Aslam Hanif. He constantly said to me in class that the term economic or the term Islamic economics only exists during this first Mecca conference. Means they still use Islamic economics, but then it's not really an official term being used anywhere. So he said that in the past, it is not called as Islamic economics. It's called as different. It's called as a study of maybe resources or even it's not a well-established study yet. And the reasons why the scholars who belong to this group say so, because you can see the argument are pretty strong too. Let me explain to you. The first reason is in conventional world, economics as a well-established study only comes in later period during Adam Smith's era. In 1776, it's almost the same year as 1976, and then you have Adam Smith 1776. So 200 years later, then the first Mecca conference. So it's a good thing if you believe in second school, then this is a good thing. It's kind of 200 years later, then you start the new school. And then, and the other reason is the subject is known previously only as political economy, but later reduced to only economy by Alfred Marshall in his book, Principle of Economics, 1890, by quoting, this is what Alfred Marshall wrote in his book, political economy or economics is a study of mankind in the ordinary business of life. It examines that part of individual and social action which is most closely connected with the attainment and with the use of the material requisites of well-being. Thus, it is on the one side a study of wealth. See, the subject matter here is wealth, and on the other, on more important side, a part of the study of man. So you can see even the secular or the conventional scholar, they use a very specific method in order to define a study. You can see the study of wealth is the first subject matter, and then the other one is study of man. So Alfred Marshall is a very well-known scholar in modern economics, and he's one of the father of modern economics that revive that initiate the words economy. He is the person that actually shortened the word from political economy to only economy. So during his movement, majority of scholars in modern economics say Alfred Marshall is the one who starts the official term of economics, because previously the study of economics is not called as economics. It is a combination with political and sometimes called as political economy. So this definition was a significant shift, for Marshall was claiming that economics was primarily a study of man and also regard to the wealth. And the previous economics, which have interference with politics during Adam Smith, because in Adam Smith's era, economics and politics are in one study. It is Alfred Marshall who is the first one who separates it and says economics can stand by its own. It doesn't need political element in it. And plus its values during the Greek era. So I already mentioned to you before that the term economics already exists during the Greek time, but they imbue it with politics and also values. So it is a different study back then. So that is why the conventional economic scholars, they don't call it as economics, because it imbues with values, it imbues with politics. So it's not really economics. They believe that economics is able to stand by itself. Even nowadays, they call economics the queen of science. The king of science, physics. The queen of science, economics. So they are proud of it. So when they say history of Islamic history of economics, they refer to the Adam Smith, most commonly the Adam Smith as the modern economics. But previously, they don't refer it like not much as economics. And since Islamic economics spurts as a reaction towards the domination of conventional or secular economics, and it follows the same argument that it exists officially after the first Mecca's conference in Islamic economics in 1976. So you can see it is a strong argument for those in the second school of opinion. Because Islamic economics that we have currently actually is a reaction towards the modern economics that start during Adam Smith. We are not given reaction towards the Greek economy, right? So what we are facing is a reaction towards the modern economy. So of course, it is a new economy that we can refer it as in a new period, not because it's reacting during the Adam Smith or after the Adam Smith secular economy. So of course, it should start in 1976, because how can we react during Adam Smith but we already started before Adam Smith? We cannot react, right? Something that we are stuck in the past and then we react later, it kind of does not work. So nevertheless, to reconcile both of two schools, we can agree that before 1976, Islamic economics exists as an old traditional study as reacting towards the old conventional economics coming from the Greek. So I classify it, history of Islamic economics, as old traditional study. Those before the 1976, those Islamic economics is called as old traditional study of Islamic economics, old Islamic economic study. And after 1976, during after the first Mecca's conference in Islamic economics, it is the well-known acknowledged event where the study of Islamic economics will now be discussed an official study reacting towards the modern or secular economic study. Because we cannot deny that our Islamic economics that we are discussing right now is a reaction towards the domination of modern economic study that started during Adam Smith. We are not trying to fight against the economics of the Greek, because it's already been fought before by our past predecessors. So if you try to do that, it's not really, in economics, we call it efficiency. So you can do that, but it's not efficient. Your focus should be more fighting what we have to face right now, right? Something like that. So now we can start the history of Islamic economics as the old and modern study. So you can see that I already specified our topic today to the history of Islamic economics, the old and modern study. Okay, from this slide, I follow the slide taken from Dr. Ugi Suharto, and because the slides are publicly given, so I copy with his permission, I hope. It is given in internet. So because he is well known in doing the history of Islamic economics thoughts, and so I just take some of the elements that he has studied, because the time for me to do all the studies myself are not enough. I only got invitation around less than I think around 1 week, more than 1 week. So of course I don't have time. I'm sorry, I don't have time to go through the history and everything and to take one by one of the scholars and what are they telling us. So from 8th to 9th century, we have, according to Dr. Ugi Suharto, We have first by Zaid bin Ali, which is the grand-grandchildren of Prophet Muhammad SAW. We already discussed some of the ideas about Islamic economics. I don't want to explain all of them because I think you can read by your own, because basically they are the same. The ideas because in order to extract the ideas of the past scholars or what are they discussing in Islamic economics, what you need is only to read what they wrote. That's it. So I don't have intention to explain to you one by one because you can read by your own. My biggest intention is to explain to you how you can define history of Islamic economics. Because I think it's more important so that we are not get confused when we are trying to say we are trying to develop Islamic economics back. What kind of Islamic economic you're trying to develop? Is it a modern, or you try to develop the traditional one and you call it as modern? So you need to know how to differentiate both of them. Some of the studies where you study, let's say, the idea of Imam Abu Hanifa or Zaid bin Ali, you need to remember in mind that some of the teaching is already stated, fixated in the teaching of Islam. Some of them, they do it because due to the need of the people at that time. Or maybe because there are also other reasons that they followed the Maqasid Sharia, because you know the Maqasid Sharia, the hukum can exist due to certain needs, and certain needs are different according to times. So it creates confusion if you cannot differentiate between these two periods. So that you may study the idea of Zaid bin Ali, and then you say that we must follow exactly what Zaid bin Ali said. No, it's wrong. You cannot say it like that. But you can say that we need to follow what is fixated in Islam already, that one of them being practiced already by Zaid bin Ali. So that one is correct, because what's already being fixed in Quran and Sunnah, we need to follow it. That's what differentiates us with the modern economics or secular economics, right? So this is very important. And second, from Imam Abu Hanifa, as an example, he found a lot of confusion surrounding the contract of salam leading to disputes. So, and then we have Al-Awza'i, and then Malik bin Anas, the founder of Mazhab Maliki. And then we have Abu Yusuf. Abu Yusuf is the student of Abu Hanifa. And I encourage you to also to read Kitab Al-Kharaj, mean the translation also, you can find the translation many. Thanks to the past generation, I have to say, that they do the work of translation, so it's much easier for us to read. So, but the Kitab Al-Kharaj is more towards the public finance. So,
Brother Omar, sorry to interrupt you. Your time is 5 minutes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I will just skip the ideas of, because you can read by your own all of these scholars and their ideas. There are so many studies already being done. You can see Al-Shaybani and Ahmad bin Hanbal. And then we move to from 10th to 11th century, like Al-Mawardi, Ibn Hazm, Mirza al-Mulk. And then we move to 12th to 13th century. And then other figures like Ibn Taymiyyah, Ash-Shatibi, Ibn Khaldun. Ibn Khaldun is another work that I think is very important for us to study. The Kitabul Al-Kharaj, Kitabul Al-Kafs, and also Ibn Khaldun, I think three of these are important for us as Islamic economists to study and read. Just translation is already okay. And then you can also refer to the works of these three scholars. And then, so in continuation of reacting towards the modern or circular economy, the periods can be classified further into two, which is before the first Mecca Conference on Islamic Economics, or the post-Mecca First Conference in 1976. So, and the post-Mecca Conference, you can also classify to two periods, 1976 to 2000, and 2000 until now. So in pra-Mecca's first conference in 1976, majority of the works are done by the reformist and traditional Muslim scholars. This I refer to the era of maybe early of 20th century or late of 19th century. I don't refer to the traditional in the Khaldun era, no. That one is already long past already. So also many of them are jurists and not specialized in economics yet. I did not say that. It is Najatullah Siddiqui in his work in 1981 who said that. And the words of Islamic economists are more on reacting toward the dissemination idea of socialism and communism. And they try to find its own ground in between the socialism and capitalism. And also the discussion slowly progresses towards more on the basis reaction towards modern or secular economic ideas on stock exchange, banks, and insurance. But in overall, the discussions are more judicial rather than economics. And during the post-Mecca's first conference, the first period, 1976 to 2000, many of the words are inspired by the words, many of the scholars or the researchers are inspired by the words of pioneers generations. And then many of them have PhD, guided by the previous generation pioneering Islamic economic discussions. This is according to Abdul Azim Islahi in his work 2010. There are several attempts have been made at giving proper definition to Islamic economics, according to Hafaz Furqani. And there is more systematic and specialized study in Islamic economics due to many courses taught in UG and postgraduate level. And there is right of Islamic finance as a legitimate study, and there is adoption more empirical methods in Islamic economic works, and many institutions like Islamic economic securities, banks, and many more. I don't put it there. And then the second last period of post-Mecca's first conference, which I refer to from 2000 until now. So if you realize there are many ideas, new ideas from Islamic economics that attempted to be practiced. And it leads to new sectors that are Islamic economic based, like Islamic finance, Islamic cryptocurrency, and then we have Islamic fintech and crowdfunding. And also we have is halal products. It's rising nowadays, like food, tourism, the more Islamic fashion, Islamic education. So Islamic halal product is now an emerging sector that not many people do this study yet. So if you can do this study, it's very good. You can study about Islamic tourism and Islamic fashion, which countries that champion this and how it should be done. But there is one issue. There is domination of Islamic finance or Islamic economics, according to Muhammad Aslam Hanif, my own lecturer, and according to Zubair Hassan. So my lecturer even said that despite the active interest in the area of Islamic banking and finance, one still faced with the fact that research in Islamic economics has declined. The enthusiasm of the late 1970s and 1980s has won. This is according to him because he feels that not many people are anymore interested in doing a proper Islamic economic study. They incline lately towards more Islamic finance. So this is so he laments in his article in 2000 since 2009 already. Also, many scholars critique the patchwork issue that adopts the conventional economics framework blindly. And even I who studied both Islamic economics and economics, I realized that there's so many similarities between the conventional economics and secular-based economics adopted in Islamic economics. So this is not good because you won't find the hidden wisdom why God asked us to have Islamic economics. Because when you just simply adopting this, adopting that without a critical analysis, how it should be analyzed, it won't have a proper Islamic economics study. And many of the scholars above urge towards rebuilding correct foundation of Islamic economics is framework, or otherwise it will only lead to the mimic or neoclassical or any foreign economic framework. So that is why up until today, we have to admit that even UN, when they propose the sustainability idea, they are not
data, you have empirical evidence.
Tak ada empirical. These are all
they are interested towards they are referring towards more on conventional new school of economics, like developmental economics. They are not referring toward Islamic economics much. Even anywhere we go, not many really cited Islamic economics. But why our motivation already reduced? So this is the thing that we need to ask ourselves. Because Islamic economics does not achieve a good achievement yet. We did able to give rise to new study of Islamic finance and also some new sectors of halal products. But it's not really able to solve the problems that we always quoting in our paper in regard to secular economics. We always say that in Islamic economics, there are problems of inequality, there are problems of poverty, but are we able in Islamic economics to solve them yet? So why the motivation already waned? So that's the thing that we need to ask also. And this will be the last slide that I'm presenting to prove what I'm saying just now, what I'm just saying just now. So you can see these two graphs. This work is done by Haq, Ahmad and Shakir Azhar in 2020. You can see through time from 1955 up until 2020, there are huge increment of citation and publication in related to Islamic economics and finance. So in 2020, the citation goes down. Not really sure why, but you can see the publication are still high. I mean, the interests are still the area of Islamic economics and finance are still strong in here. But then if you differentiate between study of Islamic economics and finance, the keywords occurrences between Islamic finance emerge as 489. But Islamic economics only 65. If I'm not mistaken, this is the last year. The last year, I guess, or maybe around what period, I'm not sure. So this is a huge shock because Islamic finance, they claim themselves that they are originated from economics, Islamic economics. But how can Islamic economics are not well properly developed yet, but then Islamic finance, there are many interests in that. Is it because they only adopt what the conventional just saying? So that's not good. So the resources should be, and the motivation should be to develop Islamic economics back, and then so that we can have a proper timeline of Islamic economic history. Because otherwise, our history ends with domination of Islamic finance, in which Islamic economists already believe that they don't have a proper study yet. So how Islamic finance can claim they already a proper study when Islamic economics are not proper study yet? So this is the thing that we need to think by our own. And then what do you think of the current progress of Islamic economy nowadays? And this is my conclusion. The history of Islamic economics as a study can be classified into two: the old Islamic economics and the modern Islamic economics. And the current history of Islamic economics have two issues. First, the domination of Islamic finance over Islamic economics, and the mimic of secular-based foundation in contemporary Islamic economic model. However, the hope is the bright future with ahead, as many scholars realize about this and motivate the younger generation to fix the mistakes. So there are so many scholars actually that already realize and admit this kind of downturn in Islamic economic progress, including Professor Zubair Hassan, Muhammad Hassan Halif, and also Islahi. And then there are so many scholars already admit about this. What they need is just young scholars who can do that. That's what they need. So they are ready to help you guys if you want to correct this kind of perhaps to fix this mistake. So it's up to us to whether we would like to develop a proper Islamic economic study, so that it can show the true wisdom of God, why God urged us to do Islamic economics rather than secular-based economics. So thank you. These are the references. I think that's all from me. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Brother Omar, for the fascinating presentation. So now is the Q&A session or question and answer session. There will be only one session for 3 students. So all the students, do you have any questions? Raise your hand through online, of course, because if you raise your hand on your place, I cannot see it. Raise your hand if you have any question. Because usually in the class, there will be a lot of questions about history of Islamic economics.
Maybe the first time they hear about people arguing about the definition of history of Islamic economics.
But that's, oh, okay. This is the first question. Comes from Engracia. Assalamualaikum, sir. I have a question. Why are there many Islamic economic thinkers who are not mentioned in the world economy, even though the main economy comes from the Islamic economic thought?
Okay.
Okay.
You want me to answer right now?
Okay, if you want to answer now, so please.
Okay. Thank you to the question. Thank you to Sis Eng Rasia for the question. So you asked why there are not many Islamic not mentioned in the world's economy. So you mean world's economy, those dominated from the modern or secular economies, right?
Yes.
So even though the main economy come from the Islamic economic thoughts, I think we need to put in reality, Sis in Russia, that when you mention that the main economies come from Islamic economic thoughts, actually we are the one who believe that. They don't believe in that. And since the world is dominated by them, and we are not able to not dominate, but to give, we already have strong arguments and publication given to them, but it's not really well accepted to many of them. And the reason perhaps because the different methodologies and different subject matter. So for them, the idea of economics is a study that stands by itself. It doesn't need values to interfere in it. It doesn't need any religious texts to interfere in it. So when you have different methodologies and different belief, that you believe that an economic study can also stand by having belief in it and values to interfere in it. So why not? Why not? Because in modern economy, they also study about heterodox economics. So heterodox economics, they have Christian economics. They also have developmental economics that they allow the interference from other sources like psychology, and also even cultures. They can interfere in economics model. But they are called heterodox economics for the reason that they are not all accepted in the majority scholars of modern economics. So we have to admit that we cannot force them to believe so, because they have different beliefs and different ideologies. What we can do is by providing that or proof to them that we able to give result better than what they believe. So if we say that Islamic economics can give less inequality and leads to people being happier, and then it gives to more efficient of resources, it gives more deeper meaning for economic that lead to less suicide and everything. So we need to prove it in order to deconstruct their belief that that economics is a standalone study, because actually it cannot be a standalone study at 100%, because we are studying about human, right? So human we cannot discuss human as a being that only live just to manage resources. I mean, do you guys being alive just to manage resources? No, right? I mean, you have a lot of things to do, right? A lot of things that define your happiness. So this is the thing we can argue to them and also to prove to them that what they believe are wrong.
Okay, it's great answer, I think. So we will step to the next question. Abdul Hakim Mahmud. Okay, why Islamic economics was practiced Western countries while we are mostly practicing their economic policies? Okay, good questions.
Why Islamic economics was? You mean is it a question you mean to Brother Abi Hakim that Islamic economics is practiced in Western countries?
Okay,
Yeah.
Abdul Hakim, you might open.
Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, I'm not clear about the question.
Okay, Abdul Hakim, you might open your mic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you explain what you mean by Islamic economics was practiced by Western countries? Is it your question?
I mean, why they use it? Because they do not use our Islamic economy.
You mean which one does not use Islamic economics?
Yeah.
Western countries, or you mean your question is okay? Can you define your question?
Okay, I mean, why the Western countries use our economy policies. I mean, the Islamic economy, because we are mostly use their policies. Like we thought our school is the economy of the Western countries.
Okay, I'm not sure when you mean Islamic economics was practiced by Western countries, because I don't know which Western countries that actually adopt Islamic economics. The only country that I feel that I see really dedicated to have teaching for Islamic economics are only UK, and through the University of Durham.
Durham University, yes.
Yeah, Durham, yeah. So other than that, I'm not sure about other Western countries. But if you're referring to the values that are practiced in Islamic economics, yes, you are correct. There are so many values that are that should be practiced in Islamic economics are being adopted by the Western countries. As an example, in Germany, they adopt the concept of combination between the needs of the people or the socialism together with capitalism. So they have high taxes being charged to people, and at the same time, people are not materially motivated. Means that you are willing to work hard and get high profit, and at the same time, you are willing to pay taxes for the needs. So this is not really practiced yet in many of the Muslim countries. Some of us, when the taxes are increased, and we say that, oh, I don't want to work hard anymore because taxes are increased. But if we argue in terms of transparency, so that your argument is true, because transparency should be there where the taxes are collected. But let's just assume everything is what we call in economics, what the term, yeah? In economics, everything else is stagnant. What I forget the term. Assume all of the variables stagnant or fixed. We should happy to work harder in order to, as an example, yeah, work harder to pay taxes more for the needs, and for the needies, they should be willing to work hard to get less reliant towards the public public money. So it's kind of these values that already being practiced in some Western countries like Germany, but are not practiced yet in so many Muslim countries. So what you are, if you refer to the values, yes, you are correct. But if you refer to Islamic economics, that referring to the text of Quran and Hadith, no, I don't think Western countries are interested on that. So yeah.
Okay, thank you, Brother Abdul Hakim. I think what Abdul Hakim means is the why Islamic economics was practiced in Western countries in terms of academic studies and also the values itself, which means which just mentioned by Brother Omar. Okay, thank you, Abdul Hakim. And the last question, is there any question for the last student?
Excuse me.
Okay, Barik. Okay, please.
Okay. Can I apply my question?
Okay, go on.
Okay. Okay. Actually, my question is simple, Dr. Omar. As we know that this Islamic economic is not well known by the people, not only we as a Muslim, but also all the people in the world. And my question is how we as a Muslim and also the good Islamic student give more good public opinion to the civilization or to the people to explain to them that the Islamic economic is not is the economic that have based on the justice, and also we can also we also have a high probability to make people more welfare, even to erase or decrease the high poverty in the world. Doctor, maybe like that.
Okay. how we, I mean, I will take the perspective as a general person, right? May not necessarily, or you want me to give from the perspective of a student or a university student. So I assume, is it you want me from you want me to give from the perspective of general person?
I think what brother Barik Ariba means is how to explain to other people that Islamic economics is the best way. Is it correct, Barik?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it's right, Miss.
Okay, but I'm
Yeah.
trying to understand is from the perspective of student. I will take the perspective of general. So generally, what you can do is, in order for us to convince them or to tell them that our Islamic economics are better, so of course you need to prove it, not necessarily by action, because the action is the latter part. You can use the logic is also good, using the logic, and also using the critics that already exist towards the modern economies. There are so many critics already being given to modern economies. Actually, in the world of modern economies or secular economies, there are also loss. They find there are so many weaknesses that they have to face. There are because there are high suicide rate, and then suddenly there is a huge demotivation for people to work, even though they argue that in terms of our welfare compared to the past 3 decades, we are better. But why people are still demotivated? Because of course, is perhaps your model of economics is wrong. You cannot assume people just because it's better compared to the last year, they feel motivated to work all days, not necessarily, right? And also, there are many more critics too, like what happened in the world of heterodox economies. So if you look and learn from heterodox economies are also good. There are so many brilliant critics that are given to the secular economies or modern economics. But from the perspective of Islamic economics, first of all, we need to believe that it already works to be able to prove to other civilization that it is a better, because already proven during the past era, right? During the golden age. It depends on what you mean by golden age lah. Means that some people say golden age during Prophet, some say during golden age mean during Abbasid. So it depends. But at that time, during Abbasid, you already be able to prove to other civilizations we are better. So what we need is to also study and able to prove to them that we are better, of course lah. So it means that when you do study, you need to show that why your Islamic economics are better than the secular, the conventional one. So I believe, and if you feel like you feel down that it's not easy to prove that, remember that it already able to be proved back then. So if you don't feel demotivated of doing that. Because it can be done. It just maybe we need to face some difficulties. That's it. Difficulty will always exist in any studies. So, but don't lose motivation to be able to prove that, because it can be proven. Otherwise, if you cannot prove it, you basically saying that our Quran is not really a good solution for our economic study. So if you believe that it is, and already proven it was before, so it should be able to prove it today, not today lah, I mean that in our days. So that will be good. I myself also trying to finish my PhD, and what I see is there are clear solution that already been given by our Turos knowledge, Quran and Sunnah, and the writings of the past scholars. So in terms of me able to prove to others that it can be solved, I think that's not a problem. But the problem perhaps will be in different challenges, like you need to find your time, you need to use more time in order to study and how to prove it, right? Because you cannot only prove from the perspective of Islamic perspective because they don't believe in Islamic. You suddenly give them a Quran text, they don't believe in Quranic text. In fact, they feel weird for you. They feel uncomfortable when you suddenly mention the Quran text and you force them to believe. So you need to find using their own logic and method that are already exist in the tools of Islamic tools in the modern economies in order to prove that they are wrong, something like that.
Okay, I do agree with Brother Omar about how to spread Islamic economics wider to others. As an academist, as a students, we have to hard work, smart work to study, to analyze, to criticize, and also to do something more in Islamic economics. And our program today, our event today is one of them. How to embrace, how to enhance Islamic economics to others, including to ourselves first. Okay, thank you, Brother Omar, for the answer. And for the last session, do you have any closing statement? If you have any closing statement, you might say it to the students.
Okay, thank you to the host and also thank you to the organizer, UMY, for inviting me to be the guest speaker for this session. And I really hope in future there are more collaboration between our universities altogether. And then I really hope that all the presentation of mine today is easily can be understood by you guys and you can utilize it for your own understanding and research. And then if any feedbacks or any comments that you can email to me. I think Sis Alfina have my Dr. Alfina, yeah, have my email. You can email to me. And please pray for me for my PhD journey. Yeah, that's it only.
Okay, thank you. Amin, amin, ya Rabbal Alamin. May Allah always is you in all the efforts. Okay, thank you so much, Brother Omar, for coming to to international program for Islamic economics and finance in UMY. Thank you so much for the fascinating insight and also the knowledge. Hope it's beneficial for us. So now before I close the program, our this lecture today, please open your camera to all the students so we can take a picture first before we close the program. Please open your camera so we can take a picture for a minute. Okay. Okay. Others? You might open your camera for not for a minute. I mean, I think just for a second. So please open your camera. Others? Abdul Hakim, Kurota Ayun, Rafif, Nuha, Fadia, Lutfia, Rosa, Khairul Fikri, Muhammad Adisena, Zian, Arya, Monica, Rizka, Rian Davala. I have to mention your name one by one, right? So you can open your camera. Sorry, I cannot open my camera. Okay, it's okay. Muhammad Adisena. Okay, I think only this student who can open the camera. Okay, so please give me your beautiful smile, your handsome smile to us. I will count it 1 until 3. 1, 2, 3. Say cheese. Okay, all right. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you again for the attentions. I hope we can meet in the other days that is more happier than now. Okay, let's close our program, our guest lecture today by reciting Hamdalah. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Mbak. Thank you, sir.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Brother Omar.
Okay, thank you to you guys for listening to the presentation. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.